What I'm most proud of as Attorney General is that we were willing to walk into the buzzsaw of some very powerful interests and never back down. Look, I had a simple rule. I never asked if a case was popular or unpopular. Never asked if it was big or small, hard or easy. I simply asked if it was right or wrong.
I will never forget that moment.
I was dumbfounded.
I can't say I was sorry.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving
It was like, you gotta be kidding.
wanna be a part of it.
He was going to be our first Jewish president.
These vagabond shoes.
There was corporate corruption. Greed had seemed to hit its peak, and he was fighting all that.
Right through the very heart of it. New York, New York. Wanna wake up in a city that doesn't sleep. To find the cream of the crop and tired of the heat. These little town blues, I'm looking away. I'll make a brand new start of the year.
On the face of it, the fall of Governor Spitzer was just another sex scandal. Was it a private matter or a public reckoning? And what of the timing? A few months after his resignation, the reckless banks Spitzer had policed brought the economic system close to failure. Everyone agreed on one thing. No one expected him to go down like he did.
It is, to a certain extent, a very classic tale, perhaps of an individual who, from the exterior, appears to have been captured by hubris, a sense of standing for virtues, and I think working very hard to articulate and work towards establishing rules and boundaries, but then himself slipping and failing. And this goes back to the days of Greek mythology. It's not a new story.
You know, in New York, everyone's like some sort of an animal, you know? There's some sort of an animal. They're hungry to make more money, hungry to get more sex, to date a prettier girl or a richer guy. Just hungry, just greedy, just animals. This Chinese philosopher said that human beings are a hybrid between animals and angels. That we're capable of animalistic behavior. Consider sex and war, but we're capable of doing beautiful things too, like art, music, or making love, you know? When I was just contemplating that, I was like, wow, I kind of dig that. We're half angel, half animal.
Good afternoon. Over the past 9 years, 8 years as Attorney General and 1 as Governor, I've tried to uphold a vision of progressive politics that would rebuild New York and create opportunity for all. We sought to bring real change to New York, and that will continue. Today, I want to briefly address a private matter. I have acted in a way that violates my obligations to my family, and that violates my or any sense of right and wrong.
Spitzer's wrong turn surprised everyone because he had a reputation as Mr. Right. As Attorney General of New York, he was known as the Sheriff of Wall Street, someone determined to take on powerful interests on behalf of those who couldn't afford to.
This was a guy who understood that he had been a member of the Lucky Sperm Club. He was really smart. He was wealthy. So he had gotten a lot of breaks in life, and he wanted to use that, to better the world.
Spitzer's father, Bernard, was a self-made real estate tycoon who sent his son to an elite prep school, Princeton, and Harvard Law School, where he met his wife-to-be, Silda Wall. His father had pushed him to succeed.
We debated issues around the dining room table, and so I guess it was more of a symposium than a touchy-feely environment. We were taught not to embrace a notion, a principle, a fact, merely because somebody had asserted it. Challenge them, push back. That was part of the conversation.
For a real estate family, Monopoly takes on a special edge. Sure, it's a game, but it's also a way for a father to teach his son some lessons about money and power.
Look, I don't want the impression to be that he was devoid of compassion, but it is true he foreclosed on me in a Monopoly game.
Bernard Spitzer tricked his son into selling Boardwalk and Park Place for cheap, then wiped him out when he landed on a built-up boardwalk. The lesson? Don't trust anyone.
But I think really what he was trying to do was teach me how the market worked. Monopoly's a fun game, but I had overbuilt and overextended, and he said, I'm sorry, that's it. There are consequences, and you learn a lesson.
What was your response at the time?
Oh, I cried. I think I was about 10. I was a kid. It was no fun. I wanted to be bailed out.
Bernie is a guy who judges people. That's a tough thing for a kid. I do remember him watching Elliot and me play tennis, and after one particular serve and volley of mine, which I won, he gave me that victory sign, and he said, yeah, that's exactly what to do to him. Elliot's strategy is to stick with his core game. Hard shots, serve and volley.
My reflexes are good. Love to get into net. As I said, the game I used to have keeps getting better.
Elliot Spitzer's notion of public service was like his tennis game. Attack, attack, attack.
Good morning, and thank you for coming.
As Attorney General, Spitzer saw an opportunity to do more than enforce the law. He wanted to use the law to change the way society worked. He sued coal-fired plants in Ohio for causing pollution in New York. He sued General Electric for dumping poisonous waste into the Hudson River. He uncovered fraud in the pharmaceutical industry where pill makers hid the damage done by their drugs, fought for minimum wage for delivery men, and forced upscale restaurants to hire more women. He would take them all on because no one else would.
There's a reason why Elliot Spitzer became famous as New York's Attorney General. The job had been a second-tier position. It had been focused on regulating crooked car dealers. And Elliot Spitzer focused on Wall Street, on the biggest guys around. And Spitzer's premise, which was right, was that Wall Street can't be left to regulate itself, or terrible things will happen.
When I assumed office, which was January of 1999, we were in a period where Wall Street and investment bankers were, to use Tom Wolfe's great phrase, masters of the universe.
To protect the average citizen, Spitzer was willing to prosecute bankers and CEOs like any other lawbreakers.
In the course of this investigation, my office developed evidence indicating that analysts gave misleading advice that helped the brokerage's investment banking clients but harmed individual investors.
When we first got into this, everybody said, well, what's the state attorney general's office in New York doing, going after this problem? Shouldn't this be the SEC? And my response was, yes, but they haven't. And if they haven't, and their investors being ripped off, we will do it.
Wall Street analysts advise buyers on what stocks look good or bad. With the rise of the internet, analysts became superstars because only they seemed to understand how to value internet companies. As stocks soared, so did the value of analysts who knew how to pick them. The more money they made, the more potential there was for abuse. Henry Blodgett was a failed writer who stumbled into being a top research analyst when, as a young stock picker, he predicted the rise of Amazon.com. By 2001, he was working for Merrill Lynch, making $12 million a year. When one of Merrill's customers sued Blodgett for phony research, Spitzer's team investigated him, using an arcane law called the Martin Act to subpoena thousands of documents and emails in search of fraud. As Spitzer's team poured through Blodgett's emails, they kept coming across the term POS. They thought POS was short for positive, for stocks Blodgett wanted customers to buy. But then they stumbled upon Blodgett's keyword chart. Blodgett's emails were honest and brutally downbeat. Meanwhile, his official stock ratings were mostly upbeat, urging customers to buy, buy, buy.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, whose IRA or 401k is being invested, they are the sacrificial lambs and being used to prop up the stock so that the Merrill Lynches of the world can then go to the companies and say, see what we're doing for you, bring us your investment banking business. It was fundamentally corrupt.
It was insiders' monopoly, guided by a basic, fundamental principle.
You don't go south of 14th Street except for one reason, to make money. The guys on the floor, all they cared about was making money. That's the American way.
Jack Grubman was a highly respected telecommunications analyst for Solomon Smith Barney. He became famous for pumping up AT&T stock to please his boss, Sandy Weil. Then Weil helped Grubman get his twins into an exclusive preschool. Grubman's payday for research? $20 million a year, enough to buy a palace on the Upper East Side.
From my family's mouth, before the money came.
Grubman's career ended when he relentlessly pumped up the stock of a company called WorldCom just before it went bankrupt.
Do you regret in hindsight staying so bullish on the company for so long?
Nothing. Look, I mean, why are you harassing me like this?
I'm not harassing you. I'm just asking you questions about the company that you cover. This caught you completely by surprise, you say?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before the money started rolling in.
There was always this, internally we called it the come to Jesus moment, where we went to whoever it was we were prepared to sue and or, go after, for doing something wrong. And we'd say to him, in no uncertain terms, tell us why, given this fact pattern, we would be wrong to sue your ass.
Early on in the investigation, the Merrill Lynch lawyers, they came into my office. They looked at me and they said, you're right, but we're not as bad as our competitors. I was a prosecutor for a lot of years. I never, heard a defendant stand up in court and say, yeah, I robbed 3 people, but somebody over there robbed 5, so therefore I'm not bad. I said to Merrill Lynch, they wanted to settle the case and pay some money, and said, we will pay a big sum of money if you promise to keep the information secret. And I said no, because my job as Attorney General is to change the system so that it's fair and will be honest. And if we seal the evidence and you pay a check and we don't change the system, I'm basically being bought off.
My office has reached an agreement that will help ensure the integrity of investment advice on which investors often depend.
Blodgett and Grubman paid million-dollar fines and were banned from the securities industry for life. But their firms bought their permanent silence with handsome severance packages. In exchange for Grubman's silence on the details of his firm's behavior, Solomon Smith Barney paid Grubman $30 million. The nation's best and brightest were lured to Wall Street in search of fast fortunes. The money they made flowed everywhere: penthouses, yachts, golf clubs, and to the oldest sector of the global economy, ready for a new cash infusion.
I have rich lovers.
Love for sale.
I don't go out with poor men. I've got no reason to do so.
Appetizing young love for sale.
I don't call prostitution and escorting selling your body.
Love for sale.
You don't sell, you rent. I love my bank account full. It's better than empty.
Sex for sugar, sugar for sex, sex for sugar, sugar for sex, sex for sugar, sugar for sex, sex for sugar, sugar for sex. What you got, girl, is so unfair. I like the way you move, so keep it right there. Or you can do what you want to do. I'm just glad I'm in front of you, but I don't mind being behind, cause I'ma touch you where the sun don't shine.
There's a street in Soho where a lot of artists set up. I was selling my paintings one day, and this charismatic fellow comes along, and he's got a beautiful girl with him. This girlfriend at the time, Natalia, said, "This is the #1 escort in New York City. I run New York's #1 escort agency.
I've never seen you naked. You think your body's good enough?
I want to buy the biggest, most expensive painting you've ever done." He gives me his business card. I still have an old souvenir.
Electricity is definitely there. I got shocked when I touch your hand.
New York Confidential, rocket fuel for winners. That's all it says.
In 2004, New York Confidential was at its height, making millions by offering clients the girlfriend experience, a few hours with naughty playmates who looked like college cheerleaders.
I had $1,500 in $100 bills in my purse. Oh, God. I pulled it out. Only 15.
We started hanging out even after I did the painting, and one day we're in the back of a town car, and he says, "Hey, grab the phone, just talk to the guy and try to help him out. He's probably looking for a girl to spend the night with." I'm on the cell phone, and, my adrenaline is going, and I'm like, okay, we have a brunette, a blonde, or do you like ethnic girls? I do a deal for, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000. He says, "Great. You just made $400 from a 5-minute phone call. I give you 10%. Why don't you just come to work for me for a little while,
That Craigslist ad pulled well, huh?
That's where it all began, where I started working for Jason.
How do you know she's a no?
We don't get that many calls for agents. One hot agent is plenty. We need more blondes, hot blondes.
They might look good in person. Maybe they got a shitty photographer,
Hot blondes. She's a definite yes. When a businessman spends, say, $2,000 an hour, he wants to read the reviews just like if you were to buy a car. You want to read the reviews. How much mileage does it get? Does it have air conditioning? 4-wheel drive? What's the difference between paying $1,000 an hour for this young lady when I can open up the Village Voice or go on Craigslist and I can pay $200 for another young lady? And I'd say, "Well, sir, sure, you can have a cheeseburger or you can have lobster. You're gonna have such a good time with one of New York Confidential's girls that you're gonna go to work Monday morning with a smile on your face. You're gonna make more money for you and your family. And then you're gonna call me up next week and you're gonna say, 'Herb, who can you send me out today?'"
You can make the assumption that they're not being sexually satisfied in their marriage, or there's baggage or whatever's going on there. And then, what's their option? Do they get divorced? Do they split up their family? Or do they seek, do they go see an escort?
One young lady was a school teacher. Another girl was, she was an athlete trying to make it to the Olympics. Actresses, singers, models.
Jason would give his business cards to every girl that he met, and half of them would call, and then a quarter of them would start working.
Some girls would offer me cash, tips. Some girls offered me sex. I don't think I ever got a tip or sex with Ashley. Yeah.
Ashley was Ashley Yeomans, later Ashley Dupre, who would become famous for having sex with Elliot Spitzer. As an escort, she got her start at New York Confidential, where her working name was Victoria.
It was through one of those straight pitches that Jason found Ashley.
Jason recruited her from the Gansevoort Hotel.
At the Gansevoort, Ashley was a bottle girl trying to break in to the music business.
She was just light. She was just happiness. She was like a great, bubbly 19-year-old girl.
Oh, it's something to see. They're so pretty.
She was a good American, New Jersey, Italian girl.
Guys loved her. She had great pheromones or something, you know?
Within 3 or 4 weeks, her rate was going up there to $2,000 an hour with a 2-hour minimum.
Her reviews were awesome as well. I think she got something like 12 consecutive 10/10 reviews. After we did our first appointment together, I told Jason, I'm like, you gotta book this girl. First of all, she's great, but she also has a perfect coochie.
Ashley's reign ended when New York Confidential was raided by local police. No customers were arrested, but Holbert was convicted of promoting prostitution and sent to jail for 8 months. Ashley would move on to work for another escort service.
For every New Yorker who's been ignored, left out, who's been told you can't fight City Hall so many times, they've come to believe it. For every New Yorker without a voice, listen, there's one strong enough for all of us.
For most of our history, we have turned a blind eye to the violations of duty on the part of white-collar criminals. We can understand it. There is something viscerally terrifying about street crime. And until you are safe in your home, you worry a bit less about what is often a bit more amorphous, which is the nature of white-collar crime, which is more subtle theft.
Spitzer broke the mold of how you prosecute a white-collar case. He went after it fast and hard, and he got things done in a period of weeks or months that would take federal regulators years. He wanted to change the system. So he'd get the goods on a company or on people and use it as leverage to institute reform, to force the industry to change the way it did business. A lot of people thought that was outrageous.
Spitzer hired a team of dedicated lawyers who were drawn to his mission.
Elliot just wasn't afraid to stand up to corporate bad guys. And, I think there was some appreciation for the fact that, he'd punch him in the nose if that's what was appropriate. The first day I came in, Elliot said, "What's next?" And I said, well, mutual funds, I think.
How much will I grow? How strong will I be? In 5 years? In 10 years? Where does my future start?
Mutual funds were supposed to be a safe place for working people to put their money. But there were rumors that sophisticated investors were playing games with those funds.
I went off and I started studying them, trying to figure out how to get at this issue. While I was immersed in this, we got a tip.
I left very pathetic voicemail messages. Reporting a crime is hard. You have to earn your credibility. You have, it feels like you're being interrogated.
Noreen Harrington had a strong financial background. After 11 years at Goldman Sachs, she ran the global fixed income department at Barclays. Then she went to work for Eddie Stern, the son of a well-known pet food billionaire. Eddie Stern's hedge fund, Canary Capital, was producing spectacular results at a time when the stock market was tanking. The big profits, said Harrington, came from manipulating mutual funds.
They were doing something really egregious, which is late trading.
At the track, customers bet on horse races before the race starts. But what if there were a special club that allowed you to bet on races after they were over? There was a club like that on Wall Street for trading mutual funds.
Mutual funds are only priced once a day, right at 4 o'clock. So during the day, you call in and you buy a mutual fund, they'll say, fine, we're going to fill your order at today's 4 o'clock price. If you call in at 4:05, they're supposed to say, fine, we'll fill your order at tomorrow's 4 o'clock price.
But what if something happened at, say, 4:05 to make the fund more valuable?
If you could go in as an investor and call at 4:10, having heard that news, go back and buy it at the 4 o'clock price, you could just buy it, wait for it to go up the next day and sell it and take some money out of it.
In one case, they went to a bank, and the bank put a computer back office terminal into Canary Capital, Eddie Stern's fund. Eddie might enter 40 trades prior to 4 o'clock. Now let's say it's 10 o'clock at night. They cancel the 30 that lost money and keep the 10 that made money. And so This was a bank completely, working with one client to destroy the profits owed to all the people in those funds.
The name of the bank was Bank of America.
We spent a lot of time saying this can't be happening. I mean, no one would be so sleazy.
I remember it was like 9 o'clock at night and somebody said, wow, we just picked these people off for $10 million. I'm thinking, how do you trade mutual funds at 9 o'clock? I mean, you're a 20-year veteran, but all of a sudden you feel like a rookie.
When Stern was confronted with the evidence against him, he cut a deal to cooperate with Spitzer's investigation, which laid open the predatory nature of Wall Street.
You have some expectation as an investor in the stock market that there are big boys out there who probably have better information than you. And it's precisely to get out of that you would go to mutual funds. And the idea that there were some sharks in the tank with you, with all these thousands of minnows, was really just really surprising. I sent out the first subpoena at the end of June of '03, and on September 4th, we announced a settlement.
And what I'd like you to do now is
3 months after I finished speaking to them, for Elliot Spitzer and his staff to have indictments, settlements, was astounding to me.
Today's announcement is merely step one. And
one of the questions I get asked a lot was, did you believe you would never work again? And I think about that question a lot because what you're saying by asking that question is, by doing public service and helping 95 million people and stopping a crime, this industry wouldn't want you?
While Spitzer stirred popular rage at Wall Street, there were a few people who were delighted to see the bankers take home big paydays, as revealed in the actual cell phone of one of the bookers of the escort service called the Emperor's Club.
I keep hearing about all the raises on Wall Street, and usually that would be good for us. Maybe things will pick up. Take care, hon.
The lawyer-banker thing is true. There are quite a lot of them. But there are lots of stereotypes, that it's this crazy drug-fueled sort of party scene. But generally, people are respectful. They just want to have a nice time with someone. Many of my clients are nicer to me than many of the dates I've been on. In fact, I've stopped dating in the real world, partly because it would be complicated and partly because my standards lifted, honestly.
The pictures of Ashley didn't surface right away. The Elliot Spitzer story broke, and then all these media outlets were calling me to do interviews. And so I did a few interviews without even knowing that Ashley was my Ashley, was our Victoria, was Kristen, was all these, who she was.
Tonight, Elliot Spitzer resigns as governor of New York. Where will he find comfort in this difficult time?
I was shocked when it all happened, but then when I saw Ashley's picture flashed on the news, I was like, wait a second,
I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it.
She fit the bill.
The New York Times website identifies Governor Spitzer's mystery call girl as Ashley Alexandra Dupree.
All over papers and television, she was called Spitzer's Girl. Known as Kristen at the Emperor's Club, Ashley Dupree was determined to take advantage of her sudden opportunity.
Clearly, Ashley was trying to make a name for herself.
After the scandal broke, Ashley's MySpace page, with one of her songs available for streaming, got over 7 million hits. To help package her career, she brought on board 2 lawyers, a publicist, and a management team. Ashley's manager arranged for an interview with Diane Sawyer. Everyone played their part. Ashley dressed up as the good girl gone wrong, and Diane Sawyer played the role of the scolding mom.
You say the work, but you haven't said the words.
The work.
Prostitution.
Escort.
Escort. What's the difference?
Escort.
What's the difference?
She catered to the stereotypes of hookers, which are, you know, poor me, I had a troubled childhood, I made a mistake, which is such a load of crap.
I can't change the past. I can only try to take what I've learned and apply that to my future.
We are being paid ridiculous amounts of money. None of these women are forced to do this, and they're not stupid. Many of the professional prostitutes that I know are very smart women who weren't abused, you know, don't have a mental disorder. They just happen to believe in this kind of work.
So do their customers. The cell phone of the booker from the Emperor's Club offered a glimpse of the club's well-heeled client list. An Oscar winner, CEOs, and high-powered investment bankers. The club treated them like emperors, and why not? They made more money than kings. They enjoyed having their way with women and the world. So it came as no surprise that they resented it when the New York Attorney General started to cramp their style.
The Economist magazine calls him Wall Street's scourger-in-chief.
He's gone from complete anonymity to what Fortune magazine calls the most feared man on Wall Street. Spitzer has deputized himself as the sheriff of Wall Street and is leading the posse for retribution, restitution, and reform.
Spitzer appealed to Democrats and Republicans. He was a law and order liberal who wasn't afraid to punch back.
When you go down to Wall Street, like when you walk into a building on
Right.
Wall Street, is it like turning the light on in the kitchen and the roaches just scatter everywhere you go?
You know,
Are you a beam of light?
It is. There was a day that I had to walk into a hedge fund.
What I was intrigued by, the number of people that were terrified by him. I mean, they literally were terrified at this guy coming after them.
The issue of CEO comp was something I had been trying to get people to take a look at. It was off the rails.
I'll take what I want. I'm a bad go-getter, yeah. Yes, I am. I'm never a loser, and I'm never a quitter, yeah.
The ratio of CEO comp to the average workers' comp had gone from about 40 to 1 to about 550 to 1. CEOs began to just take everything they could, and ultimately that was going to destroy our economy. Because instead of running the companies to create long-term wealth and long-term investment, all the games we've seen, everything from backdating of stock options to maximizing short-term profits without sufficient investment for the long term, these are things that are cancers inside the economy.
One of the flashiest executives was head of the New York Stock Exchange, Dick Grasso, who boasted owning 10 cars and 3 homes. He traveled on private jets, often flanked by armed bodyguards. His job was to regulate and market the New York Stock Exchange. Nicknamed Punky, Grasso was a scrappy college dropout who started on the floor and worked his way up.
There's a job opening at the New York Stock Exchange. Chairman Dick Grasso resigned yesterday over the fury raised by his massive pay package.
Not only was Grasso paid an average annual salary of $20 million, his retirement package totaled nearly $140 million. After Grasso stepped down, the new head of the exchange brought the matter to the Attorney General.
There's a statute in New York that says the value of the paycheck that the head of a not-for-profit receives must be commensurate with the value of the services provided. I like Dick. He's a decent guy. He didn't provide services worth $139 million. Perhaps more perversely, the compensation had been determined by the very people he was supposed to be regulating.
I had the most respected group of directors from the corporate and financial world. They exercised their business judgment. They paid me what they believed to be fair and reasonable, which I agree with.
Spitzer decided not to go after the Blue Chip International Board. Instead, he sued Grasso and the head of the board's compensation committee, Ken Langone. Langone would prove to be a formidable foe.
I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better, I can tell you right now.
The son of a Long Island plumber, Ken Langone had co-founded Home Depot and amassed a fortune of well over $1 billion. A dedicated philanthropist, Langone was not shy about paying people well.
At the time, we awarded Dick these pay packages, I truly believed that Dick earned every single penny, and more.
Spitzer demanded that Grasso return $100 million. At the time, Langone told Fortune magazine, "If Grasso gives back a fucking nickel, I'll never talk to him again."
He, as anybody in that position would, took umbrage at it, and he developed a rather strong animus towards me.
The day that I sat in this room and he went on television with that farce press conference he had announcing that he was going after Dick Grasso and me and all kinds of bad things about me and Elliot's theatrics.
You can't pay the head of a not-for-profit that much money, close to $200 million. It's simply too much, it's not reasonable, it's not right, it violates the law.
It was headline, it was glorious headlines. All these captains of industry, hey, this is big game. This is going after elephants.
He became a very vociferous critic of mine, and that's all fair game. In my view, we were right, and he was wrong, but again, it was something he felt deeply about.
In 2004, at the Democratic National Convention, Spitzer took up the issue with Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric.
Jack and I are very good friends. Spitzer came up to him with froth coming out of the sides of his mouth, spitting. I mean, he's so exercised, and pointing at Jack. You tell your buddy, I'm gonna put a spike through his heart. This is not something the Attorney General of New York State says. So when Jack told me, I said, Jack, do me a favor. I said, if you see him, tell him one thing. Make sure it's steel because wood will break.
The case dragged on for years. In 2008, the New York State Court of Appeals dismissed the case for a bizarre reason. Since the suit had been brought, the New York Stock Exchange had abandoned its not-for-profit status. Dick Grasso kept all his money. But Elliot Spitzer had engaged an enemy with virtually unlimited resources, one who was watching and waiting for any misstep.
I'd like to think I'm not a vindictive person. And a basic tenet of my faith is forgiveness. The most harm that Elliot Spitzer's done to me is I am defying my faith. I can't forgive him. And I should, but I can't.
In Ken Langone, Spitzer had created a mighty enemy. And then he added another one when he took on Hank Greenberg, the head of the world's largest insurance company, AIG. At the age of 79, Maurice Hank Greenberg was the most powerful businessman on the planet. Under his command, AIG had grown to be worth $157 billion, with 92,000 employees. Admired for his spectacular results, Greenberg ruled his empire with an iron fist.
I think he was Louis XIV to everybody else's, being a mere baron. I think Hank Greenberg epitomized the power of corporate CEOs, and in my view, he was the most powerful person in corporate America.
Greenberg's measure of his own worth was the stock price at AIG.
The normal cycle of business is that sometimes your profits go up and sometimes your profits go down. But Wall Street didn't like companies to perform that way. They wanted to see steadily rising profits. If you delivered steadily rising profits, they'd give you a higher stock price. So Hank Greenberg came up with a new type of insurance that would create the illusion of steadily rising earnings.
Greenberg's AIG was fined over $100 million by federal authorities for helping other companies cook their books. In 2005, it appeared that AIG might be using similar tricks to pump up its own stock.
The more we dug into AIG, the more problematic the company itself appeared to me to be. And the disconcerting aspect of it was that it did appear to come from the very top.
When did you first hear about Spitzer's investigation of AIG?
When I got a subpoena.
One deal generated by Greenberg caught the eye of Spitzer and federal investigators. It was a suspicious contract between AIG and Gen Re, a company owned by billionaire Warren Buffett.
One of the most startling moments in this case was when tapes emerged that were dispositive, overwhelming proof of exactly what these transactions had been. As this was unfolding, Dick Beatty called me one Saturday morning at home and said, let's talk about this.
The board wanted me to find out what I could about the Gen Re investigation. Elliot was jogging on a Saturday morning or something, and I met him in the park. The only thing of significance he told me, as I recall, was that they had Hank's name on tapes.
Hank Greenberg phoned up Ron Ferguson and said, Ron, I need your help. We want to borrow $500 million of reserves off you for a couple of years.
To boost his stock price, Hank Greenberg wanted to make it look like AIG had $500 million more than it did.
Original phone call was to see if we can get a lost portfolio from Ron Ferguson. What happened afterwards, I don't know. I wasn't involved in the details of the transaction.
Hank's phoning him every day to ask how it's going, and the idea now is to go back and say, yes, we've got $500 million of reserves.
Clearly, this is a confidential transaction.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, this is being handled at the highest levels in AIG.
She says it is highly, highly, highly confidential, and if anybody ever hears that, that we're involved, would be in deep shit.
A handwritten deal memo laid out the terms. Gen Re would pretend to pay AIG $500 million in 2 installments for a phony insurance policy. There was no risk of paying a claim. For doing the phony deal, AIG would pay Gen Re a $5 million fee.
No risk. No risk for $5 million.
Hank Greenberg's initials, MRG, were all over the document.
The 2 people at AIG who are involved are Hank Greenberg and Chris Milton.
AIG was a big company. I didn't just stay focused on the Gen Re transaction.
There's an old saying that's attributed to Hank Greenberg that I have no reason to doubt, which is that all I ask for is an unfair advantage.
Yes.
And it sort of gives you...
Well, yeah, that tells you something, doesn't it? Yeah.
What was an unfair advantage to Greenberg was seen as cooking the books to AIG's accountants, PricewaterhouseCoopers. The firm refused to accept AIG's financial statements as long as Greenberg was the CEO.
Hank wasn't pushed out by Elliot. What happened was the investigation that followed, and the accountants at the end of the day said, we're not taking that certification anymore. So you're sitting here as a board of directors saying, my God, what does that mean? That's what drove the board deciding that Hank had to go, and one other issue.
Spitzer demanded that Hank Greenberg testify under oath. However, Greenberg's lawyers advised him to plead the Fifth, despite AIG's policy to fire employees who didn't cooperate with regulators.
That troubled a lot of people on the board. They wanted him to say, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to take the Fifth. I'm going to testify. I think Frank Zarb and I called Hank and told him that the board had made the decision that he had to step down.
These are very serious offenses, over $1 billion of accounting frauds that AIG has already acknowledged. That company was a black box run with an iron fist by a CEO who did not tell the public the truth. That is the problem.
So does that mean you're moving toward an indictment?
No, I didn't say that. It depends what we will prove or can prove that Mr. Greenberg knew at the time. We have powerful evidence. We will proceed with it.
It's too bad that the Attorney General doesn't come out from behind his office where he's protected against libel. I wish he'd come out and say these things as a citizen.
Spitzer attacked Greenberg, and I saw him on television one night
saying that Hank Greenberg was a crook.
John Whitehead had been a war hero, a deputy secretary of state, and the chairman of Goldman Sachs.
And his office continued to leak information about why he was a crook without ever any charges being brought against Hank. So I said, this is something I have to do something about. So that's what caused me to write that first article. Something has gone seriously awry when a state attorney general can go on television and charge one of America's best CEOs and most generous philanthropists with fraud before any charges have been brought, before the possible defendant has even had a chance to know what he personally is alleged to have done, and while the investigation is still underway. That was the thing that set me off.
I had heard of an incident involving former Goldman Sachs chairman John Whitehead. Mr. Whitehead had come out publicly supporting Mr. Greenberg. After that op-ed was published, he received a threatening phone call from Eliot Spitzer.
He asked me a couple of questions about my article, and then he came right to the point. He said, Mr. Whitehead, he said, you and I are now at war.
You know, he had written it up. I don't know if I said those words or not. If that's the worst I said, you know, okay, that's, people are at war with me all the time.
You have fired the first bullet.
You have fired the first bullet. But believe me, by the end of this war, I will fire the last one, and you will be dead.
Well, I don't think I said that. I mean, John White, I wouldn't say, look, I hope I didn't say that.
He was screaming into the phone.
He and I had a heated conversation. I will leave it at that. It was a private conversation. As I've said, I've never denied that I have heated conversations in private. It's, you know, it was me, it is me, so be it. And I think sometimes it's how you get things done.
He said, I will destroy you. And those are strong words. I had never heard words like that before from anybody. I couldn't quite believe it.
Spitzer's outburst became legendary to his staff. When he exploded, his staff would remark that Spitzer's evil twin, Irwin, had dropped in for an unexpected visit.
In fact, a very prominent lawyer of a very fine company had a meeting with him. And this man said to me, when I came out of his office, I swore I saw the words EVIL across his forehead. I have no doubt if Hank Greenberg was still running AIG would not be in the fix it's in today.
Today, the federal government announced it has once again reworked the bailout of insurance giant AIG.
Now the bailout needs a bailout. 2 months after AIG was given that first emergency government loan, it's getting another lifeline.
In 2008, AIG was at the center of a global economic meltdown. Before and after Greenberg's fall, AIG had been selling billions of dollars of insurance to the world's biggest banks to hide their risky gambles on home mortgages. When housing prices collapsed, AIG couldn't pay the claims. U.S. taxpayers paid $183 billion in an effort to save the global economy from collapse. According to Greenberg, the blame for AIG's fall and the global meltdown rested with one regulator, Eliot Spitzer.
Spitzer wanted me out. When politicians involve themselves in who's going to run a company and who is not, we're on dangerous ground in this country.
It is the big lie writ large. The books were being cooked at his company. Hank Greenberg was removed as CEO by his own board when they saw the underlying facts of what was then one of the largest financial frauds in history.
I didn't do anything improper, neither did any of the senior team do anything improper.
Then you say to people, if Hank Greenberg had still been there, this would never have happened?
It would not have happened.
The very trading practices that led to these gargantuan obligations that taxpayers are now bailing out all began while he was there. Very significant accounting frauds, reinsurance contracts, which he participated in structuring that were deemed by a federal jury in Connecticut to be illegal. 4 people went to jail. He was called an unindicted co-conspirator by the prosecutor in that case. So his maintaining uninvolvement in the structural issues is simply wrong.
Spitzer wanted to prosecute Greenberg for financial manipulation, but was called off the case by the U.S. Attorney, Michael Garcia.
Michael Garcia sent me an over-the-top letter when we were going to include significant allegations relating to Hank Greenberg in our AIG complaint, telling us to back off. And it was a moment of, I don't want to say there was anything improper about the letter that Garcia sent, but he basically said, don't you dare go near this. We're doing this, relating to Hank Greenberg.
Michael Garcia never pursued charges against Greenberg. Instead, he would lead the prosecution that led to Spitzer's downfall. Both Greenberg and Langone hired PR firms to go after Spitzer, and Langone hired a private investigator to find out what he could. I want to move on to the Emperor's Club. When did that start, approximately?
Sometime in 06.
Early 06?
Thereabouts, yeah.
You were flying about as high as you could possibly be flying. I mean, this was prior to, but at that point in time, you were pretty certain you were going to be governor of New York, would you say?
Right. Well, if your point is things were as good as they could get from a political perspective, I suppose that's right. And the only metaphor I can think of, perhaps, is Icarus. Those whom the gods would destroy, they make all powerful.
A friend of mine recently gave me a T-shirt that he claimed he had printed for investment banker friends of his, but he thought I would enjoy it and maybe I could even learn from it. The T-shirt said on its front, "Hubris is terminal."
I'm not a kingmaker, but I'm going to call it. You're going to win. I'll tell you why.
I'm glad I came tonight.
Oh, absolutely. It's done.
In early 2006, Spitzer's approval ratings were over 60%. He'd announced his run for governor and was predicted to win in a landslide.
You could do anything. You could punch a toddler and still win.
His career was every politician's dream.
No, I was the enforcer. I mean, I was the kid who played left fullback, not because I had real talent, but I took people out. You play hard, you play rough, and hopefully you don't get caught.
Right around this time, Cecile Sewell, the 22-year-old CEO of the Emperor's Club, took a phone call from a new customer. Though he used the name George Fox, it was actually Eliot Spitzer.
The very first time that he called, I answered the phone, and he called and he was whispering. So I thought it was a prank, and so the other booker called and said, okay, I'm ready to start answering the phones. So we transferred the phone to her, and I said, oh, I just spoke with someone, I'm gonna let you handle that. And apparently he saw, I think, 3 people in a row just back to back that evening, so I guess it wasn't a prank.
Reading New York Magazine, George Fox, AKA Eliot Spitzer, claims he was drawn to websites in the classified ads, and while surfing the web, found the Emperor's Club.
Secret heart, what are you made of? What are you so afraid of? Could it be 3 simple words?
When you're sending a girl on a trip to Chicago for $30,000 overnight, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're running prostitution. It feels different. And so that's where I think we got a little bit lost as far as the whole legality of the situation.
It's very secret that you try.
Cecile Sewell dropped out of the University of Miami when she fell in love with 60-year-old Mark Brenner, who owned the Emperor's Club. Soon, they were running it together.
The night that they arrested us, we were just sleeping together in our, holding each other. We really just loved each other. Not only were we lovers, but we also had the business, so everything was all wrapped up into one. And I love him, so I still do.
Come out and share it.
Cece, as she was called, decided to take the Emperor's Club in a more high-end direction.
My primary focus at the time was to promote the website to the right people, to the right kinds of girls, the kind who, are well educated and come from good families. The number of diamonds that the model had indicated not only her hourly and daily rate, but also just the general quality of companionship you could expect from her. So if she was 3 diamonds, her daily rate would be 10,000 and her hourly rate would be 1,000. It went 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, 2,100, 3,100. And then the day rates, you would just add a 0. I did that with mathematical precision, right? Whatever, just add a 0, that should work. We had our core girls that we immensely valued that really could, bring home the bacon, and then we had this sort of spiral effect. Ashley went for 1,000. She certainly wasn't the core. She was definitely one of the girls like on the edges, the sort of peripheries. We had people working with us in LA, Miami, New York, London, Paris. They were just all over the world.
The club's richest client in London was the Duke of Westminster. One of his dates was Zainab Brazdik.
She drank an entire bottle of champagne, and he doesn't drink alcohol. So she got drunk, and once she figured out who it was, went to the reporters, and, it was sort of a mishap, if you will.
Zaina had violated the employment standards of the club and had to be terminated.
I began seeking out fashion models and the absolute highest financial elite as clients and sort of putting them together and then charging a fee.
So I get it. So that was the rationale then. In other words, so long as you presented it as a get-together service, then you weren't doing anything illegal.
Yeah.
The man known as George Fox became a regular client.
How often did he meet with Ashley or Kristen?
Well, he met her one time, and that was the big Mayflower experience for him, I guess.
But it was just that one time?
One time.
How often did you see Governor Spitzer?
Legally, I'm not able to answer that question.
Court documents say they may have had previous encounters.
The court documents didn't say that. Ashley Dupre let the world believe that she was the Love Gov's girl, but she was only a one-night stand caught on a wiretap at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. That begged the question, who else was there?
There was someone who he enjoyed seeing most, and she was very pretty and a very intelligent girl, and not a fashion model. She had her own career, and he liked to meet with her frequently, and she was actually the first person who said, "Oh, this is Elliot Spitzer."
The escort chose the name Angelina. I discovered who she was, and she agreed to speak to me so long as I did not disclose her real name, her face, or reveal her voice. So I transcribed her interview and hired this actress to perform her words.
Used the name George Fox, and he booked an hour at a New York hotel, Upper East Side. That first time, it was very businesslike.
You said he wasn't that interested in the companionship.
Right.
You're laughing. I mean, it's like...
It's funny.
Because he wasn't at all interested in the companionship.
I'm not, from what I heard.
I remember thinking he was like, I hate to put this crudely, a trying to get his money's worth type client. I said to the agency, I don't want to see that person again.
In what seems to be a kind of epidemic of, political figures in sex scandals, One question is why, why hookers? I mean, why, particularly when that's, illegal?
Again, I don't want to delve into, certainly don't want to speak for others, and even in my own case, don't really want to speak to that issue except to say that you cave to temptations in a way that perhaps seems easier and perhaps is, in some very twisted way, less damaging.
Less damaging how?
Than having affairs or relationships that take on a different tenor.
I'm sorry, they had what?
The relationships that take on a different tenor.
You mean have some sort of emotional component?
Perhaps, yeah.
Eliot Spitzer had taken the first step into his double life. He had just entered a world which formerly he had seen only from the outside as a prosecutor. In April 2004, after wiretapping a social club in Staten Island, Spitzer helped the FBI and NYPD bring down a sophisticated prostitution ring. He knew how it was done. He also knew his life was about to become more public than it had ever been.
If we're ever going to reform Albany, it's going to start on November 7th, Election Day. Because if one man can stand up to the powerful, so can you. He'll ask, and you'll answer. And with one collective roar, we'll wake this state government right out of its long sleep. And on that day, government will stop being that thing we complain about and start being that thing we can do something about.
When I started doing Eliot's campaign ads, everyone was very enthusiastic because we all felt like we were working for a candidate that comes along once every, 20 years, 30 years. I came in with a line which was bring some passion back to Albany. New Yorkers don't like anger, but every New Yorker likes passion.
Zilda Wall Spitzer persuaded her husband to hire Jimmy Siegel. She sensed that Siegel had the ability to frame Spitzer's severe, combative style in an emotional, populist campaign.
I don't think she signed up to be a political wife or the wife of a politician, but I think she ended up really enjoying the campaign.
She was amazing to work with and one of the nicest people, and she really cared. She really believed in him and believed in this cause.
Pre-Barack Obama, you could make the case that Eliot was the preeminent Democratic politician in America at that point.
In the political world, it was kind of like working for a rock star.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the governor-elect of the state of New York, the Honorable Eliot Spitzer.
Taking a record 69% of the vote, Eliot Spitzer had a popular mandate to make big changes.
Together, let's build that one New York. Let's walk toward that better day. Thank you, and God bless the great state of New York.
Here he was, he's governor of New York, he's king of the world, he's the future president of the United States. Eliot Spitzer's going to fix up this state, and then he's going to go to Washington and do the same thing that he just did for New York, for the United States. That was in everybody's mind.
People had said to me before, do to Albany what you did to Wall Street. And we tried. We went at it with a determination that was alien to the culture of Albany.
The Capitol building in Albany was a monument to corruption. America's most expensive government building was like the legislature, a bog of waste, double dealing, and graft. The gargoyles on the walls haunted the place. The maze of grand stairways navigated by special interests robbed lawmakers of any sense of perspective.
It's like an Escher. You don't know if you're going up or down, left or right. The mind gets turned upside down inside that building.
I think over the years that some people have appropriately seen it as a metaphor for the labyrinthian nature of New York politics.
It's time for Live from the state capitol with Fred Dicker.
Fred Dicker of the New York Post was a 25-year veteran in Albany.
Well, this is Fred Dicker live at the state capitol. Welcome. What a beautiful day. It's going to be even
Deeply
more
conservative, Dicker was proud of calling himself an equal opportunity prick, attacking whomever came into office.
Eliot Spitzer, who didn't suffer fools likely, was treating a separate branch of government, the legislature, that could block him at every turn as if he could just push them around like they were Wall Street executives. Well, they pushed back, and they pushed back hard.
The man who pushed back hardest was Republican Senate leader Joe Bruno. A charming old-school dealmaker, he wasn't much interested in Spitzer's reforms.
He thought that he really was sort of the second coming, and that he was going to get everybody to do what he wanted to do. I think he started thinking dictatorially, almost, you know, in his own mind.
It wasn't a cakewalk. It was not going to be as easy as building a legal case, presenting it to a fact finder, and then you get a resolution. This is a political process, which is much more complicated. It's three-dimensional chess.
Chess was not Joe Bruno's game. A former boxing champ, he knew when to duck, when to punch back, and sometimes how to fix a fight. In the Senate, he had an annual discretionary fund of $85 million to spread around the state like political fertilizer. By 2007, the FBI was investigating him for corruption. Word was that Joe wanted a graceful way out.
He told me repeatedly, we're partners, we're going to get things done. But he didn't know how to negotiate, he didn't know how to compromise.
Spitzer attacked Albany head-on. Early, he won some big victories. But to get his first budget passed, he had to play the game Joe Bruno's way, trading favors in backroom deals.
When we did the budget, when I sat with him, this went off, this went off, this came on, we shook hands, we got done, face to face. Frankly, he got criticized for caving in to some of our needs. He got panned for that in the press.
Spitzer responded by insisting on the very thing that Albany Pauls despised: open, rational debates.
Thank you to everybody for being here in what is now, I think, our fifth in what will be a continuing effort to meet, to forge consensus on issues, raise issues, frame an agenda.
Spitzer wanted debates to be like his father's dinner table, but Joe Bruno was the turd in Eliot's punch bowl.
But, Governor, I mean, again, I say this very respectfully. That is nuts. What he wanted was for you to just sit there like pupils with a teacher, nod your head as he was lecturing you and pontificating. Well, government doesn't work that way. You responded.
Joe, I'm now going to tell you something very simple. This is my room. You're not going to now derail us from a conversation about energy, which we were just having. This has been a useful...
I thought you concluded. And I called him several times, said, what on earth is the matter with you? You understand that you have to have the cooperation of the legislature, both houses. He said, well, we're at war. This is a war. And he said it like a big overgrown kid.
There'll be a few tackled bodies on the field, so be it.
He was elected to get to Albany and turn around the 30-year decline of the state, to reform state government and do something about the economy, which for decades has been like, you know, on a slow downward spiral in New York State. He had a temper, he had this passion. It was, when focused and well conceived in its execution, it's what, you know, the people wanted to have happen.
While I'm a steamroller, babe, I'm bound to roll all over you.
Yeah, well, I was told that Governor Spitzer had just gotten off the phone with Jim Tedisco, the Assembly Minority Leader, and had said to him, you better toe the line of what I'm trying to do here or be subjected to the governor's wrath, which he had described as being a fucking steamroller.
So James Taylor was on my mind, and he has a famous song. It was a throwaway line, honestly meant in good humor, with Jim Tedisco. And frankly, I said, you know, we're not trying to be the steamroller. It was in that context.
When he said, I'm an effing steamroller, I mean, he meant it.
He took on his own party when he bitterly opposed their choice for state controller.
So he had both houses of the legislature, one from his party, one from the other party, who are now sitting up and taking notice that, whoa, this guy, this is not a guy who plays well with others.
Democrats would come into this room and say they couldn't stand the governor. Democrats were saying they loved Joe Bruno, the Republican, because he was taking on the governor.
Steamroller's no match for that baby. I can tell you that right now.
Now I'm a napalm bomb, babe, just guaranteed to blow your mind.
Some of those old-time pals, really understood human nature. And I think Elliot's view of it was we would force them to do the right thing. But it's not the way the system is set up.
Again, I don't want to just say you're wrong, but you are.
I'd say to him, boss, the system is set up so that only incremental change is possible. And he'd be like, God damn it, no, it's not. And the result that it produced is he began to go around Mr. Bruno to specific members of the state Senate. Mr. Bruno took that to be an act of, a hostile act.
He quickly announced publicly he's going to take me out as leader. I'm history. And the Republican majority was going to cease to exist. He was going to take us out. I said something like, I've been threatened by hoods and thugs my whole life. You're just an amateur. If you think you're going to bother me, you just don't.
We knew that folks would come down hard on us if we ever stumbled. And he said, you're damn right. If we ever fall, they'll kick us in the nuts. Which is why, the downfall was so shocking.
Did it begin to haunt you as something that you thought was possible, that you were going to get caught, or that didn't even, at a certain point, that didn't even occur to you?
No, of course it does. Of course it does. And you just deal with it.
How did you deal with it?
Those are the mysteries of the human mind, I suppose. I don't think I can answer that question because I don't think I know.
I got a call months later, and this was kind of a last-minute thing. This was at the Waldorf Hotel. He showed up with this baseball cap on, clearly trying not to be recognized. And I'm like, don't tell me it's that guy again. In that second meeting, I was rather pushy with him. I was like, we're gonna sit and have a chit chat and have a nice little date here. And it ended up being a fun couple of hours. I thought it was Eliot Spitzer, but I couldn't be absolutely sure. So I made a point to look out for him in the papers. And it was at that point that I said to the people who ran the agency, you know who this guy is, don't you? And they said no.
He was hiding. He didn't want anyone to know who he was. He was extremely paranoid. He knew that his entire political career was on the line, and ultimately, vice just took over virtue. He could not control himself. I don't know, I just remember one time he was trying to book an appointment, and I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, this man is so paranoid. He is just going to attract a situation. Because he was just asking for it. It's like, listen, man, if you are so worried about what you're doing, don't do it. I mean, just getting a deposit from him was an issue.
In order to book an appointment out of town, you had to pay up front, so he would have to go through sending these money orders in.
And we're like, okay, why don't you just deposit X amount in the bank if you want to meet her by tomorrow, and we're not going to receive payment by tomorrow. And he's like, I can't go to the bank.
I never acknowledged who he was, but he knew that I knew. He started to request me. I saw him outside of New York in Palm Beach, Puerto Rico, Dallas, Washington. He was always very guarded about what he would say. And I mean, I would insist on having a conversation before we started. I'm like, I'm totally taking advantage of this because he's so smart and interesting. I would like have my little rants about what was wrong with New York City that needed to be fixed. And he listened.
When I saw him out with his wife, with his children, he had it all together. You know what was strange with Eliot Spitzer was he could be pleasant and charming and act very caring. When my wife was reported as being seriously ill, he called me several times. And this is right in the height of some of our worst exchanges. Couldn't have been any more pleasant. But when he came after me in what was called Troopergate, then it was apparent that this man really intended to destroy me.
In the Spitzer-Bruno War, the biggest battle was Troopergate, so called because of the way state troopers may have been misused for political purposes. It was an attack on Bruno that would boomerang on Spitzer.
It was a Sunday, and I was reading the local newspaper, the Albany Times-Union, and there was a story on the front page, and the suggestion was that Bruno had misused state helicopters and other state travel for personal and political purposes.
We released public documents on use of the aircraft. It turned into a story, a one-day story. But in a brilliant, I think, communications move by Mr. Bruno's people, it was portrayed as, oh, those are records that aren't normally released. Oh, there's spying going on. There's dirty tricks going on.
The allegations are that the executive conspired to use the state police, state resources, to literally spy on a colleague in government.
I was told, no, don't comment, don't respond. And I kept saying, we've got to respond. We're losing badly in the public relations capacity by not standing up and saying how ridiculous these allegations are.
Why wouldn't he answer questions under oath? What's the explanation for that, Governor?
Fred.
And was it on the advice of counsel in your agency, in the executive chamber? Was he advised not to do it?
Fred, as I've said very clearly, the investigation was one where
keep
they asked
changing
for
the
information.
subject.
I'm not
The question
changing-
is, why didn't he
Fred,
answer the question?
I've answered the question.
It was a very intense press conference where Spitzer was trying to claim he had nothing to do with Troopergate. He hardly knew anything about it.
Spitzer insisted the leak had been Darren Dopp's idea and suspended him. But in fact, he had told Dopp to release the records about Bruno and suggested how.
The famous quote that you're referring to is, shove it up his ass with a red-hot poker.
Investigations engulfed Spitzer's office and created the public perception that he'd abused his power. In reality, the controversy was a smokescreen that hid Bruno's corruption.
The guy, Bruno, he was going to basically fundraisers and then, making sure he made a 2-second call to, some guy in the electricians union so he could say, no, this was, state business.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a complete fraud and a hoax. With one of the most corrupt state capitals, we're investigating whether or not there was a leak to a reporter. Oh my God, a crime has been committed. It's the biggest joke.
A careful examination of Bruno's travel logs revealed that state troopers had ferried Bruno on extended visits to see Spitzer's political enemies, including a trip to CV Star, the office of Hank Greenberg.
Do you recall Senator Joe Bruno coming to see you?
Yeah, Joe Bruno would come from time to time and see me. They're always trying to raise money.
When he came, did you talk Spitzer?
I don't recall that. I don't think that, if we did, it wasn't a major topic of our conversation.
Spitzer's enemies were beginning to talk to each other. To push the attack on Spitzer, Joe Bruno hired a political operative who reveled in his reputation as the country's most notorious dirty trickster, Roger Stone.
Here you have Mr. Clean, the sheriff of Wall Street, someone for whom ethics is his signature issue, charging that Bruno is dirty. This is a tyrant, a megalomaniac, a would-be dictator who really believes that you, in government, you somehow either have the right by getting a lot of votes or being born to privilege to just issue orders and people do what you say.
Stone was this legendary figure. He had his hair dyed. He was a swinger in literal terms. And the reporters, they're like, they thought of him as like a piece of work. But they had like affection for him because he didn't make any bones about the fact that he was such a flawed character. Even in his own Republican ranks, he was like regarded as like a maverick, if not gadfly, if not lunatic. But crazy like a fox kind of a guy, I guess.
Sure, I believe in a gonzo brand of politics because you got to get people's attention in a world where there's so much competition for their attention politically, and then there's the rest of life. Sports, food, entertainment, whatever it is, you're competing for all of that because politics, like all those other things, is entertainment.
In 1996, Stone was fired from the Dole presidential campaign when it was revealed that he and his wife had marketed themselves as swingers. "We are seeking similar couples," said the ad, "or exceptional, muscular, well-hung single men." But that didn't stop Roger. An elegant dresser with a taste for martinis, he reinvented himself as a charming secret agent with a license to kill. He reveled in the body politic and his own body building. Just below his neckline, he bore a tattoo of his hero, Richard Nixon. Just a few weeks after Bruno hired Stone, a mysterious voice message was left on the phone of Spitzer's 80-year-old father.
This is a message for Bernard Spitzer. You will be subpoenaed to testify before the Senate Committee on Investigations on your shady campaign loans. If you resist the subpoena, you will be arrested and brought to Albany. And there's not a goddamn thing your phony, psycho, piece of shit son can do about it. Bernie, your phony loans are about to catch up with you. You will be forced to tell the truth, and the fact that your son's a pathological liar will be known to all.
We spent some time and effort to see where it came from, and it came from an apartment that had been rented by either him or a company that he owned, and the voice, we were able to compare from the voice, the message he'd left on the voicemail to appearances he had made on TV, and we got a voice analyst say, yeah, it's the same voice, and people who knew him said, yeah, that's Roger Stone's voice.
The tape did sound eerily like me. Ultimately, private investigators that I retained determined that there had been a tap on my phone at 40 Central Park South. I now believe that a rogue unit of the New York State Police, under the direction of Elliot Spitzer, who understood that we had jujitsu'd him on Troopergate, was monitoring my calls. In other words, I think the tape that was released was pasted together. It was a put-up job.
The FBI called my dad's office and asked to come by.
On September 6, 2007, Agent Katzman from the FBI visited Bernard Spitzer at his Manhattan offices.
The questions didn't focus much on what Roger Stone had done or allegedly done or the issues relating to the phone call. It was more about me.
Did you think anything about that in retrospect?
In retrospect, it has crossed my mind.
And it crossed your mind in what way since then?
Now, wondering whether this was part of the investigation that led to my downfall.
The FBI showed up at my apartment. They just showed up at 8 a.m. and they said, "We want to talk to you. We think you know what this is about." Agent Katzman was the guy's name. He wasn't very nice.
Stone said that the FBI also contacted him and wanted to talk.
We could never actually get a confirmation about what they wanted to talk about, and I declined to have that interview on the advice of my attorney.
Bruno fired Stone because of the phone call. But Stone confirms that he was then hired by wealthy, motivated Republicans to stay on the Spitzer detail. A few months later, Rich Baum, secretary to the governor, received an email from Stone's consulting company. The question is, how did the investigation of Spitzer begin? The government claims it spotted a suspicious wire transfer of several $1,000s.
What was interesting to me is that the whole thing comes from a single money transfer that sort of sent up a red flag, a suspicious activity report. Every day there are thousands of these suckers filed.
The Federal Clearinghouse receives 3,400 suspicious activity reports, or SARS, every day.
Someone had to have taken a very personal interest in this particular transaction and kind of shepherded it through the process in order for it to be the subject of a lot of attention and ultimately be the basis for a case.
The SAR was filed by North Fork Bank after Spitzer asked the bank to keep his name off a $5,000 wire to something called QAT Consulting.
My understanding is that they didn't even know what QAT Consulting was, and that they called Morgenthal's office.
Robert Morgenthau, the Manhattan District Attorney, was surprised when the federal government came looking for help on how to prosecute escort services. The feds just didn't do prostitution cases. They also naively asked if it was common to prosecute customers. The answer from Morgenthal's office was no.
Once they figured out it was a prostitution ring, then it seems to me you're at a juncture on the road here. Once you realize that it's just a governor with a heart-on, the most you're going to get out of this is a news story and a resignation. I think the government has better things to do.
The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York was Michael Garcia, the man who had tangled with Spitzer over the investigation of Hank Greenberg. Normally focused on terrorists, mobsters, and Wall Street, Garcia's office was suddenly spending enormous resources to go after a small escort service. Garcia was a Republican. Was this a political hit?
The Spitzer investigation began at the very moment when the Justice Department was involved in a huge scandal of its own. And the issue was whether the Justice Department was hiring and firing U.S. attorneys based on politics, and whether it was going after powerful Democrats in order to get rid of them.
The only banking activity that seemed to interest them was Eliot Spitzer's banking activity, as we sunk deeper and deeper into this horrendous banking scandal that's convulsing the country. Suspicious banking activity by Eliot Spitzer and the United States government was on the trail.
After notifying superiors in Washington, the U.S. Attorney's Office obtained permission to wiretap the phones and emails of the Emperor's Club.
The night before, it's like 8 p.m., we're both sitting at our computers, and all of this information, like our client information, is being sucked out of the computers. And we're like, oh my goodness, we have hackers. We download some kind of like encryption software and try to save our information, whatever's left. And then we go to bed as usual, and 6:30 a.m., bang, 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 it's the FBI. Okay, shock. I was certainly unprepared to just be woken up out of my sleep at 6:30 a.m. and, have the FBI come in their bulletproof vests, asking me if there were firearms in the house, and all I'm thinking, I'm like, that cash is gonna get us in trouble.
Cece and Mark Brenner had nearly $1 million in cash in a safe in their closet.
The guy came in, one of the FBI men, he came in and he was like, we are closing Emperor's Club VIP. And I was like, oh my God, my stomach, my everything, my baby. It was just surreal. I mean, that was like my child.
The essence of what went on here was, in federal law terms, a violation of the Mann Act.
Known as the White Slave Act, the Mann Act made it a crime to transport women across state lines for immoral purposes. That is why federal prosecutors were particularly interested in out-of-town dates with Angelina and Ashley. In recent years, it's used to go after child prostitution rings. It is never used to prosecute Johns or customers.
We have to look at these statutes in terms of standards of enforcement. Is this statute, in fact, being enforced that way uniformly across the country? And the answer is, it is not.
Why then did the Department of Justice want the case? After months of investigating Spitzer, Michael Garcia's deputies suddenly sent emails to Washington seeking support for using the Mann Act. Wiretaps revealed many customers who paid for escorts all over the world. But Garcia's office was only interested in prosecuting one of the customers.
They pressured me, like they do on TV. And they said, we know you worked for this agency, and we want you to look at some pictures and tell us if you recognize anyone. And I did that. And Elliot Spitzer was in there, and I said, yes, I recognized him, and yes, I'd seen him. And I said, should I maybe have a lawyer? And they said, well, we want to keep this confidential. The main thing about that meeting was that they were very insistent and pressuring me in an uncomfortable way, you know, for me to admit that I had sex with Elliot Spitzer. You know, why him and why not anyone else?
All you have to do is lay this case side by side with the D.C. Madam case and look at the way the prosecutors behaved in Washington and the way they behaved in New York, and it's like night and day. Constantly making clear that, no, we're just after the madam, and we're after the business. We are not interested in the customers.
In the D.C. Madam case, 2 high-profile Republicans were discovered using an escort service in Washington, D.C. Senator David Vitter had actually ordered prostitutes during roll call votes when he was a congressman. He apologized, but he did not resign.
David Vitter is still sitting in the Senate. He never left. Nor was there ever any pressure brought by the federal government for him to leave. And what's the difference between these cases? One case involves 2 prominent Republicans and the other involves a Democrat. That's the only difference, frankly.
The question remained, how did the U.S. government first find out about Spitzer? Was the FBI tipped off by one of Spitzer's enemies?
I was in a private club, an adult-themed club in Miami called Miami Velvet. There was a woman sitting at the bar. I was sitting at the bar, and we began a conversation. And I asked her what she did, and she said she was professionally a call girl, but she wasn't working this particular night. I said, well, you know, who are your clients? What kind of clients do you have? You know, she had athletes, she had captains of industry, she had prominent businessmen, she had politicians and so on. And I said, well, like who? She said, you know, I almost had a date with the governor of New Jersey. I said, John Corzine? You had a date with John Corzine? She said, who's he? I had a date with Elliot Spitzer. I said, no, Elliot Spitzer's the governor of New York, not New Jersey. She said, yeah, well, I'm not into politics. I said, well, there anything else notable? And she said, well, it was kind of weird. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, he had these black knee socks, and he kept them on the whole time. So I ask you, what kind of guy fucks with his socks on?
The black socks thing isn't true. He wore low-cut socks, and he took them off.
The next day, I discussed it with my attorneys, and I asked them to contact the FBI and tell them what we knew in a formal letter. Now, I don't claim that this was a revelation to the federal investigators. It may have been a piece of a puzzle that they were putting together. I may have started an investigation in an area they weren't looking at. I have no idea, and I haven't made any claim.
The FBI insists that it never received the letter from Stone's attorney.
It wasn't an addiction, it was a desire, the need to find an outlet that was not within the very confined world that I had been living.
Had you found a way to completely compartmentalize it so that there was this over here and...
Yeah.
And was that the beauty of it in a way as you saw it?
Look, I don't want to go there, but it did not affect governance, and in fact, I can say with real certainty, in February, March of '08, people were beginning to say, hey, wait a minute, their strategy is working. We were winning the political races, getting the economic agenda in place. People were beginning to see that the chess game was playing out.
Join me in good faith. I will meet you with an open hand, for we will realize this opportunity best if we work together in a spirit of cooperation.
We'd been through so much, and we'd had a very successful State of the State address. We'd had a great budget announcement, and we really thought we were turning the corner. In fact, we were at a bar, and one of the senior advisors to the governor raised his glass in what I'm sure was the moment that jinxed us all, and said, to turning the corner. Well, didn't turn the corner.
This prostitution business, referred to as the Emperor's Club VIP, was an international organization.
On March 6, the Department of Justice brought charges against the 4 people who ran the Emperor's Club.
In addition with the prostitution offenses, they're charged with money laundering.
2 things caught the attention of reporters: the high prices paid to the escorts and the highly unusual appearance in a prostitution case of members of the Public Corruption Unit of the Department of Justice. When did you first have an inclination that you were going to have a serious political problem?
The Thursday when it was announced that a case had been made against Emperor's Club.
And when that came out, what did you think?
I said, this is an issue.
The FBI wiretaps of the Emperor's Club intercepted more than 5,000 phone calls and text messages, and more than 6,000 emails.
They knew where I'd been. They had dates and times. On one trip, the booker and I were texting back and forth. Like she would say, he's there now and he's ready to see you. And I would say, okay, I'm heading over there. They said, look, we already know all about you. We know you were at this hotel at this time, and 10 minutes later you were here. We know this.
The list of charges against the Emperor's Club, the affidavit, was surprisingly detailed. As a piece of writing, it was crafted like a mystery story, full of clues. It teased the reader with a few sentences each on clients 1 to 8, and then 5 riveting pages on client number 9, and his one date with Kristen, otherwise known as Ashley Dupre, at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C.
The affidavit was filled with all sorts of crucial details that allowed reporters to go off and find out who Client 9 was.
The Times won a Pulitzer because they went down and they did things like they went to every major hotel in Washington and figured out who was in that suite in which hotel, because they didn't know which hotel he was in.
The affidavit was full of steamy sexual banter and concerns about whether the client was difficult or even safe. Was the writing meant to convict the accused or embarrass the client?
An FBI guy with sandy-colored hair and a mustache brought up something from the wiretap. He said, we heard that sometimes you were asked to bring sex toys. And the guy kept pressing me. It's like he wanted to get some kind of information about some kinky sex stuff or something juicy that happened, like the governor's into whatever. And I flat out said, I don't see how any of that is relevant to your investigation to prosecute what you're trying to prosecute. There was nothing. Maybe some sexy lingerie or something, but that was all I ever took.
There were a number of leaks in this case, most obviously to the New York Times, but a couple of New York TV stations also were onto the story. And the Albany Times-Union got sent the criminal affidavit in the Emperor's Club case, and its reporter was told specifically to look at Client 9 and told that he was a wealthy New York public official.
Eliot Spitzer was never charged with any crime.
So you really have to wonder whether or not the purpose of the investigation at some point became the leak.
Some breaking news this afternoon. The New York Times is reporting that Governor Eliot Spitzer of New York has informed some of his senior administration officials that he had been involved in a prostitution ring.
I researched the conference. We went into my office, the whole conference, and had the TV on.
Cheers erupted on trading floors around the city as word spread of Governor Spitzer's stunning downfall. Some traders reportedly broke out bottles of champagne to celebrate.
They weren't the only ones. 4 diners at the 21 Club claimed that they spotted Dick Grasso, Hank Greenberg, and Ken Langone celebrating Spitzer's fall with a magnum of champagne.
Did you say that you were surprised by this news?
Not at all. I had no doubt about his lack of character and integrity. It would only be a matter of time. I didn't think he'd do it this soon, or the way he did it.
We do know that Ken Langone told CNBC shortly after all of this broke that he had a friend who was in the post office.
I know for sure he went himself to a post office and bought $2,800 worth of mail orders to send to the hooker.
How do you know that?
I know it.
Why is CNBC sticking a mic underneath his mouth? Because he was enemy number one.
Spitzer's now, it's his turn, and the guy's in back of him, when you're waiting. The guy's in back of him waiting to buy a money order, and Spitzer goes up and buys $1,800 worth of money orders.
Okay, so you're saying that he said he had a friend who stood behind Eliot Spitzer in the post office line, overheard him sending a money order for a prostitute. I mean, this is too amazing to be true.
It was totally coincidental that somebody tells me this an hour before that. It's God at work, I'm telling you. Here's God saying, here's a little bit more for you.
Unless you think Ken Langone has friends who call him for post offices, my hunch would be that it was someone closer to him than a friend.
What do you mean, someone closer to him than a friend?
An employee, a consultant, somebody that he hired to be there. That would be my hunch. But it's, do I know that? Is he going to tell us that? He said it was a friend. Why he volunteered this information, he just couldn't stop himself from crowing.
I didn't have any private eyes on him. I didn't have any dirty tricks guys on him, none of that.
I knew before the rest of you guys. Well, how did he know? I don't know, but I did discuss it with the governor, and the governor felt like he was under surveillance. He thought he was under surveillance.
The day I gave my proffer, I walked out of the courthouse, and there were journalists suddenly everywhere. I went straight to the bar. I had a couple of drinks, and I was sitting in the bar, and a news reporter sat down next to me and said, what do you think of the Eliot Spitzer news? And I was like, oh my God, they've got me already. I was like freaking out.
The very day the news broke, there were messages on Angelina's phone from reporters who wanted to talk. Mysteriously, they knew her real name and her phone number, information only available to the government investigation. Angelina left town and never returned the calls.
All alone.
I do not believe that politics in the long run is about individuals. It is about ideas, the public good, and doing what is best for the state of New York. But I have disappointed and failed to live up to the standard I expected of myself. I must now dedicate some time to regain the trust of my family. I will not be taking questions. Thank you very much. I will report back to you in short order. Thank you very much.
Everybody was just in shock. I was angry, and that was the last thing I'd ever would have expected of him to have done. My heart broke for Silda. I knew Silda very well and his family, and they'd always seemed to have such a strong relationship and a bond.
He was so straight-laced as to be laughably straight-laced. At some social event, Eliot said that he had met Penelope Cruz. And at the time, she was the hottest star out there. And I said, wow, that girl's amazing, isn't she? She's dynamite, no? And his response to me is, I could see how some people might think she's alluring. And I just said to him, I said, wow, what are you talking about? But yeah, that was Eliot. That's why this notion that, there'd be someone other than Silda was such a shock.
Did you learn something about your wife that you didn't expect as a result of this experience?
I wish I hadn't needed to learn it. But I learned that the depths of her forgiveness are deeper than are ever to be called for.
After the initial announcement, Spitzer considered his options. Despite her pain, his wife encouraged him to stay on as governor. Calls went out to the leaders of the state House and Senate. No one would support him.
The reservoir of goodwill was empty. The combative style left him without friends and defenders in the end.
The only relevant question really was, what can I do to minimize the continued pain to my family? And it seemed to me that to fight to retain the office at that point would make it even longer, uglier, more painful than to take the alternate path. So I resigned.
From those to whom much is given, much is expected. I have been given much: the love of my family, the faith and trust of the people of New York, and the chance to lead the state.
I think I was in shock first because I saw Silda standing there. We've seen so many women standing there behind their man, and many women just felt, you know, this is enough.
Intrigued by the cultural issues of the scandal, performance artist Karen Finley wrote a one-woman play about the intersection between sex and state.
The public performance of this private moment was just so voyeuristic. The painting in our mind of what we weren't seeing, this very personal, sexual, private act.
You never know how much I love you, never know how much I care.
I'm not the most politically correct person in the world, and I saw Elliot later after this whole thing, and I said, you know, you could have run in France on this and won. So
when you kiss me, fever, when you hold me tight, fever in the morning.
Eliot Spitzer's a joke, a national joke. He is like the poster boy of a man out of control. But these other guys aren't. These other politicians aren't. I mean, Bill Clinton is one of the most popular figures in American politics, and he got a blowjob in the Oval Office.
When we met that day, I knew you were my pet. I want to tell you how much I love you.
he had sex. Oh my God, kill him. Burn him at the stake, you know? I hope when history looks back at that, they say, gee, change the way Wall Street operates. Went after, you know, environmental abuses, you know? Went after the insurance company fraud. Went after this, and then on this side, had sex in a Washington hotel room.
He resigned 13 months ago and has remained largely silent until now. With the U.S. economy in turmoil, the man once known as the Sheriff of Wall Street is back. Governor Spitzer, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Matt.
I've heard rumors that he's trying to figure a way out to get back into public life. I mean, the guy's got skin like that, okay? I mean, that thick.
After his resignation, Spitzer watched as his Wall Street reforms were attacked and rolled back by investment banks and the federal government.
He had been onto the very issues that almost did us in, the collapse of the financial system. These are the guys that got us to the brink of disaster. And Eliot Spitzer was after them years before the collapse occurred.
Goldman Sachs will have a profit that we estimate of about $12 billion last year. That is precisely what taxpayers gave them to help them get bailed out from their AIG exposure. Banks should be lending to people who have a repayment schedule, who produce something. It should be an old-fashioned, boring business, and then you grow an economy. The outrage is because it is our money that is subsidizing these crazy bonuses.
As Spitzer began reappearing in public, so did Ashley Dupre. With uncanny timing, it seemed that Ashley appeared on Fox TV or the cover of the conservative New York Post whenever Spitzer made public appearances.
Hi, I'm Ashley Dupre. I used to be on the front page of the New York Post. Now I'm writing for it. That's right. I'm the New York Post's new advice columnist. Ask me anything about love, sex, and relationships.
A lot of people around the country are discussing Eliot Spitzer's efforts, and it's what it clearly is, to rehabilitate himself. Senator Joe Bruno of the great Capital District. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for being with us.
I think he needs therapy.
I agree.
They ought to help him to get himself rehabbed because
Assuming he can.
people like this are very dangerous.
Roger Stone, let me ask you about what's going on now with Eliot Spitzer.
Well, Senator Bruno is essentially correct. The man is a psycho.
Don't bust people who are running call girl rings if you yourself are going to patronize one. I mean, the man's entire life is a lie, and I therefore thought this fight needed to be finished.
Roger Stone's campaign against Spitzer continued with his promotion of Kristen Davis, a convicted madam who claimed to have supplied escorts to Eliot Spitzer. New York law enforcement says there's no evidence of any link, but newspapers continued to print her claims anyway. In March 2010, Stone backed her as a candidate for governor. What do you think about an Eliot Spitzer comeback?
Look, I can't forecast it. I hope not. I hope what he did.
You think it was simply...
Yeah, he thought he's above the law. The law didn't apply to him.
What do you think is next for Governor Spitzer?
You know, we all have our own private hells. I hope his private hell is hotter than anybody else's.
Ken Langone and Hank Greenberg are powerful enemies. Did it ever concern you that they might have played a role in your downfall?
I guess it didn't concern me enough. You know, look, not to sort of mince words, there are all sorts of rumors about their helping or taking credit occasionally for bringing me down. My view is I brought myself down, and I will not try to blame others or excuse my behavior. I did what I did, and shame on me. If they were involved and in unearthing it, okay, so be it. That isn't my concern right now. What I did in our investigations of the companies, obviously I believe it was right. My personal behavior that led to where I am right now was obviously wrong, violative of everything I hope I believe in, and I make no excuses.
We want our political people to be God. And maybe that's the biggest problem for us, is that he's a human being and he's not God. This isn't just a national narrative, but it's an ancient narrative that happened that has to repeat itself into our culture because it is unresolved.
Aside from your journalism career, your column, you're also a lovely singer. And I want you to come back and be a regular columnist for us as well.
Thank you.
But can you give us a little Christmas cheer?
Oh my God, on
Sing us off the
spot. Okay.
Okay.
The weather outside is frightful. The fire is so delightful. But since you're no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Ashley Dupree.
Yeah, New York, stand up.
Start spreading the news. Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I'm leaving today. I wanna be a part of it. New York.
Gold went up to 1040 today. There was a huge panic about inflation and the Arabs wanting to be paid for their oil in a currency other than US. But I think that's just a temporary rumor. But it did have serious impact.
It's so deep. I woke up in a city that don't sleep. Got me up all night like a sink with a slow leak. Holds me in its grips. I grab Manhattan.
A couple of people that I'd like to do that to.
Okay, the governor of New York is using our service. How bad can what we're doing be, right?
Known as where you go to become the person you wanna be. Look, you got some small town blues you're trying to lose. We got a big city here to abuse your virtue. It might help you or hurt you. Say or desert you. Get close, the bright lights might burn you.
Virtually worthless. About $100 million.
New York, New York.
New York, New York.
These bag of
chores. Never know who's telling lies, but the city keeps score. Good place to watch your back, in fact, watch your front too. Jump too high, someone is quick to bump you. Stuff you in a trunk with a lump when you come to. It ain't everyone committing crimes, but still not do. Trudge through the urban jungle and you'll see some things. New York eats its young and defeats its kings. Projects, the penthouses, parked out at the hood. Win or lose, you can't choose, you take the bad with the good. And the upside is higher than the sky above the scrapers. If you're looking for fame, power, influence, or paper, make you move. But don't think your little lunch comes free. It's granted by the higher power known as NYC.